Britain came up with a brilliant alternative to the euro, the hard ECU, which, according to unearthed reports, would have been politically and economically less damaging and could have ultimately averted the eurozone crisis if the bloc had agreed to it. 12 years after the 2008 global financial crisis, the future of the EU is in question again as the COVID-19 outbreak has exposed deep internal divisions at a time when a common solution is desperately needed. On Thursday, EU member states failed to reach a compromise on debt sharing for the third time amid the economic slowdown. 9 EU countries, namely, Spain, Italy, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, Ireland, Portugal, Greece, and Slovenia are urging Brussels to issue so-called Corona bonds, a common debt instrument aimed at raising funds on the market. However, the so-called Frugal Four, Germany, the Netherlands, according to Paul de Grauwe, a professor of European political economy at the London School of Economics, the Eurozone might soon blow up if nothing is done. Calling for the European Central Bank (ECB) to finance COVID-19 deficits, he recently said in a report for Project Syndicate, having witnessed the 2008 financial crisis and the subsequent Eurozone debt crisis, Europe's policymakers should already realize what the COVID-19 pandemic could mean for the economy. To avert a self-perpetuating downward spiral, the European Central Bank, in particular, will need to start thinking outside the box. As the euro area faces a long period of intense struggle, unearthed reports suggest that Britain's alternative to the euro could have either averted this. The 1957 Treaty of Rome had committed the EEC, the precursor to the EU, to the abolition, as between member states, of obstacles to freedom of movement for persons, services and capital. The Single European Act of 1986 reiterated this and legislated for the creation of an internal market by the end of 1992 which shall comprise an area without internal frontiers in which the free movement of goods, persons, services and capital is ensured. As head of the European Commission from 1985 to 1995, Jacques Delors played a key role in the process that launched the monetary union and single currency. However, his plan was received with high levels of skepticism by Britain and in 1990, Margaret Thatcher's Conservative government proposed an alternative to Mr Delors. According to a BBC report of the time, then Chancellor of the Exchequer John Major announced the plan in a speech to German businessmen. It was envisaged that the currency, called the hard ECU, would be used initially by businesses and tourists and managed by a new European Monetary Fund (EMF). The report noted, although the proposal does not rule out the abolition of national currencies, it represents a more cautious substitute to Mr Delors' plan for economic unity. Mr Major said, "What we're seeking to do is to provide a currency that those who wish to use it could use, either for business transactions or personal transactions, without going down the route of a single currency across the whole of Europe, which we think has enormous difficulties and enormous." According to a 2015 report by economist at Capital Economics John Phelan, the hard ECU would have been less economically and politically damaging than the euro and would have ultimately been a superior approach to a monetary union. Mr. Phelan argued that responsibility for the hard ECU would have rested solely with the EMF, but decisions about national monetary policy would have still been taken by member states. The Economist claimed Britain's proposed currency would have provided greater policy space for elected national officials. Suggesting the euro crisis could have been averted if the bloc had listened to Britain, he wrote, "One market does not need one money." Indeed, by allowing for devaluation as a tool so long as it was needed, the hard ECU would have allowed capital mobility to be maintained in the face of imbalances such as the Eurozone currently faces by allowing the switch from fixed exchange rates to independent monetary. Under the euro, by contrast, both Cyprus and Greece have seen capital controls introduced. Mr. Phelan added that when the Maastricht Treaty, which enshrined Mr. Delors' plan, was signed in 1992, the hard ECU was consigned to the famous dustbin of history. However, with hindsight, he argued it is unfortunate as the Eurozone contains several economies that desperately need the tool of devaluation that the euro denies them. He concluded, the hard AQ would have allowed them this tool until such time as they no longer needed it. If that time didn't come, then they should not have joined the single currency. Politically, by giving democratically accountable domestic policymakers the greater policy space offered by devaluation, the hard AQ would have generated less of the resentment that the euro currently fuels. The Economist does not seem to be the only commentator who believes the hard AQ would have been a better option for Europe. The architect of the euro himself, Jacques Delors, claimed in a 2011 interview that errors made when the single currency was created effectively paved the way for the financial crisis. The 94-year-old Frenchman told the Daily Telegraph it was the omission of strong central powers to stop members running up